Hi everyone, I hope you're having a fabulous Valentine's Day and that you're going to sit with me and enjoy another rubber dance design team tutorial. So today I'm going to share with you a romantic bit of Valentine's bunting. So it's a bit of a home decor piece and I've hung it in the garden here because that was the best place for me to hang it and get a good shot of this pretty bunting. So I had the opportunity to use my brand new stamps from Rubber Dance, which is I Heart Art, and I'm going to show you how to make some Valentine's bunting for the one that you love. Actually, you could make it for yourself because it is really pretty. So as I said, this project uses the I Heart Art stamp set, and Rubber Dance have got some brand new stamp sets out, and this is one of them. So I'm setting off painting what will become the backs of these little MDF pendants, or pennants, not pendants, pennants. These little bunting shaped triangles that are already drilled, ready for you to thread. These come from the MDF Man, and he provides all sorts of interesting blanks that you can use to make home decor projects or perhaps storage for your craft room. And these are the pennants that I purchased up there when I was at a class, and it's taken me a little while to get around to using them, but here they are. So I've started out by picking 3 colours of acrylic paint that I think go together. I've got this sort of buff colour, I've got a pink, and I've got a blue, and they've all got a sort of vintage tone to them. They're not sort of baby pastels, they've got a little bit of a vintage hue, and I like the colours, and I think they all go together very much. As you can see, it's an eco-friendly paint. I've had it for ages. In fact, I think I might have pinched it off my mum, and I'm just using that to give the backs of these pennants, and the side I'm going to coat twice with the acrylic paint. So just using my heat gun to dry them off in between the 2 coats, and then I'm going to set to and give them a second coat of acrylic paint. So everything's nice and dry, and I'm going to be working on these 3, so one of each colour, and I'm going to be showing you what I'm going to do with them, and I hope that I inspire you to make some fun romantic bunting of your own. So the plan is to cover the other sides of the bunting with all sorts of snippets of pattern papers and hearts and little Valentine printouts that I've printed off the internet, just to get a collage working on the front of each of the pennants. And I'm restricting the colour scheme to the colour of the pennant. So you can see here I've collected together all sorts of bits and pieces of paper that match this sort of cream or buff natural colour scheme for this particular flag. So I'm just piecing all of them together in order to cover the actual flag itself. I'm not too worried about the edges. I'm going to trim those off afterwards. I just want to get a nice layering effect. Now, this technique, I haven't actually showed it yet. It is something that I learned from Tim Holtz this month. It's quite used in mixed media, so you'll see it on other people's pages and things, and it really is a fun way to cover something and come out with a really nice look at the end of it. So I'm using matte multi-medium by Ranger, and that means I won't have any glossy, even if I get the glue on the top of this project, I won't have any gloss or shiny finish to the finished project. So I quite like a matte multi-medium, but it does also come in gloss if you prefer that. So I'm just arranging all my pieces. I've got a couple of printouts from a sheet that I printed off the internet. So I've got sort of a little romantic poem and illustration, and I've got some romantic music score as well. So I'm mixing them in with the pattern papers, and then I'm adding a couple of sort of folk art style hearts, and that's one of the flags covered. So at that point I'm going to cover the whole flag with the matte multi-medium, make sure everything is stuck down, and then I'm going to let it dry before I trim the edges. So that's the beige piece, and then I'm going to go and carry on the same technique. You can see here, this is my little printout, and I gathered together a few free images from Pinterest, put them on a document in Word, and you can see I've kind of colour coded them. I knew I wanted a couple of blue images that I wanted to use on my blue flag, and a couple of pink images that I wanted to use on my pink flag. And I'm literally just going around my papers. These are some Graphic 45 papers that I'm using just to mix and match some patterns and colour and texture to cover my next flag. So again, keeping the theme for this flag blue, but I am mixing in a couple of those beiges just so that they look like they all belong together. And using the same principles, I'm keeping the little blue Valentine as my main image, sort of trying to keep her quite central, and then just piecing together all the other little bits and pieces to create a pleasing collage on the front of the blue little pennant. And then I'm also going to cover the whole thing again with the matte multi-medium. So definitely coat your piece with matte multi-medium first, and then I'm also coating each of the papers, and that way you make it less likely that you'll miss a spot and have a piece that's loose. So I'm just creating that collage, and I've got that lovely music score with the roses on it that go with this pink theme. And then it's just a case of collaging everything together, and there's no right or wrong, it's just about enjoying using the papers and making a little pleasing arrangement so that you can follow on to the next step, and that kind of brings everything to life, and you'll see as I start work on the next step of this process. So you can either use a craft knife or a pair of scissors. I think probably a craft knife's better, but do make sure that your piece is dry, because if it isn't, you'll find that you probably rip or tear your paper along the edges with either your scissors or your craft knife. So I'm just going around it with my craft knife because the scissors weren't very effective, and that's because the MDF is a little bit deeper and the knife works a little bit more efficiently. And then I'm remembering to put the holes back into the bunting. So don't forget, if you need to stick anything down, you find that anything's loose, just add a little bit of that matte multi-medium underneath and make sure that everything is stuck down well before going on to the next step. So I'm cutting off everything with my craft knife, and then I'm going to give you a little tip about finding the holes. So obviously I want the holes re-pierced in my tag. I've got my pokey tool, and what I'm going to do is poke through from the back side first. You can see that corner lifted a little bit there. That just gives me a registration mark to go through with a bit more force from the front, and you get a neater finish if you push through from the front, because any excess paper that you make will be pushed into that little hole. So you can see I've missed the corners of my flag, which is quite easy to do, and I'm just re-gluing those. So the next step that I want to do is, they're quite bright, they're okay, you might like them like this, but now I'm going to just knock them back a little bit with a wash of, I'm going to use the beige paint for this. You could use gesso if you wanted, but I want to keep that sort of creamy hue, so I'm taking a little bit of acrylic paint and adding some water. So I'm just taking my wash of acrylic paint and going right over the whole lot of the front of the flag, and then I'm just taking some kitchen roll and taking some of it off again. So it just has the effect of just lightening all the colours and sort of blending them a little bit, and of course the fact that I've dabbed the paint off creates a little bit more texture as well. And then I'm going to repeat that process for each of the 3 flags. Don't forget that I am going to do this for 6 flags in total to make my little string of bunting, but I'm just going to show you each of the colours as I go along. So it's quite easy to reveal some of the details you do want, like I just dabbed off a little bit more on the face of the cherub because I definitely wanted to be able to see that. So it's quite an easy thing to do, and you can see it just lightens the effect of the papers slightly. So I've decided to do the same on the colour on the back of the 2 pink and blue flags. Obviously you can't really do it to the cream, and again I've just wanted to just knock that colour back a little bit just to make it look a little bit more, I don't know, shabby chic or vintage, and I'm not too bothered about the sides because I've got a plan for those. So I'm just concentrating on the back of each of the flags. So again, drying off that layer, that way you make sure that you keep your papers nice and dry by drying in between each stage and each application. And then I'm going to give each one of these another coat of the matte multi-medium. Now the reason that I'm doing this, and I wasn't sure if it was going to work, I thought I might need to use gloss, but I want to use my Pitt pens, brand new to me. My mum bought them for me for Christmas, so this is the first time that I'm actually using them, and I've seen that they've been used on a glossy surface, and that enables you to have a little bit of time to blend these pens. You'll see that in a moment, but first of all I'm just giving everything a coat of the matte medium. I thought it would still act as a seal, so it does work, because obviously I know because I've made this already. So I'm just going to sort of show you the process, so I'll slow everything down in a moment, and I'm just making sure though that that matte multi-medium is totally dry. One thing you do not want to do, particularly if you've got a brand new Christmas present, is ruin the nib of your pen. So I'm being doubly careful to make sure that everything is dry. So moving back to real speed. So I'm using this Faber-Castell, not sure how to say that. Anyway, it's a Pitt pen, a Pitt big brush pen, and it has a ink in it that is permanent when dry, but it does have a little bit of drying time, and it's that property that I'm going to use to add shadows to each of my little layers of paper, and it just gives this whole project depth, this sort of multi-layered background of paper. So all I'm doing is going along each little section of paper where I can see that one piece of paper is lying on top of another. I'm just creating a shadow by drawing around the edge of the paper and then rubbing away the ink so that I just create a faded out shadow. So you'll get more confident with this as you go along, and I definitely would work through all the pieces of paper first, because they tend to be the pieces that you lay down first. Look for all those edges, the ones that are going to be emphasised, and then come back to the actual detail like the hearts or the flowers, that the ones that you've probably got sitting on the top of the piece or the top of the layering of the paper. So you can see already that I'm starting to add depth to the actual collage that I've created with all those papers. So I've turned my flag around each time that I sort of am working on a particular side of the paper, the side where I want the shadow to be, and you can see that using the matte multi-medium to seal everything gives me that extra drying time so that the pen isn't soaking straight into the paper. So now I'm coming back and I'm going around each of the more prominent pieces in my collage, like the hearts and the flowers. So hopefully they'll look more defined on the finished piece. I'm just working a section at a time so that it doesn't dry in between adding ink around a shape and then coming back with my finger to blend it out. Now I thought I was going to have a permanently coloured finger from this, but it didn't work out like that. It washed off quite easily, although I have got a bit of a layer of glue on my finger as well, so that might have helped. So I think you've got the gist of that. We're in nice and close so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to speed things up so you can see. Once I've shown you the difference between this flag with the shading and the flag without, it definitely brings it to life, I think you'll agree. So now I need to do the same effect on my next 3 flags. So this pen actually looks a little bit brown in the box, but it's actually called warm grey, and it does come out as a sort of warm browny grey, sort of a taupe colour really, I suppose, and it's perfect for these papers. So it's nice to have a choice of greys to work with, perhaps if you were using different colours and hues of paper in the future, you've still got a grey or a pen colour that matches, and you'll be able to create shadows with. So you could actually leave your little flags at this. I'm just making sure that there are no excess pieces of paper around the edges, just giving them a light sand. Then on to this lovely romantic set of hearts that I've just received from Bibby. They're a brand new set to Rubber Dance. I heart art, and you can see why. They're perfect for journaling projects as well as cards, and they're going to be perfect for my romantic bunting. So I'm just going to use a selection of these stamps. I'm looking in particular for perhaps ones that I can frame little areas of paper with, and I'm going to be using some embossing powder, a platinum embossing powder, which I think also blends. So I'm having a little chat to myself about which stamps I'm going to use. So I'm going to use 3 feature stamps, and then I'm going to use the smallest squiggle heart, which you'll see as I work through this project, to add extra hearts to. The idea is to add them and still be able to see the papers underneath, so we'll see how I get on. So I'm working on a sheet of paper to catch all my excess embossing powders. So this platinum embossing powder I've had for absolutely ages, hence that lovely price, £2.75. I'm not sure what they are now. This was from Stampendous, and I'm going to be using a Versamark ink pad to attach the embossing powder to my project. So you might find, because you've created these layers and ridges with your papers, that your stamping isn't perfect. Because of the nature of these stamps, that doesn't matter too much, but I do still want to make sure that I create that lovely heart shape so that that really is visible. So if you find any bits missing, you can either use a glue pen just to draw in those extra details that you want, or you could actually take the stamp off the block, and that way you can get sort of uneven pressure by using your hand to make sure that the stamp makes contact with all the different layers of paper. So in this instance, I'm going to use my glue pen, and because it's only a little small detail, I just want that heart to be a little bit more defined. I'm just filling in the little piece that didn't quite catch, and then I'm going to add the embossing powder, and it will look like the stamp is stamped perfectly. And then I'm going to use the stamp that I said is going to feature on all of them, just to add a couple of extra hearts. I'm just twisting and turning the heart to add a couple more details to my flag. You can see I'm not trying to cover up all those papers, just enhance that romantic feel. And this lovely platinum embossing powder works really well. So slowing down again so you can see exactly what I'm doing to cover the edge of my pennant. So this is going to create a frame around the edge of these MDF pendants. I keep going to call them pendants, pennants, or flags, that's easier. And I'm just using the embossing ink to just emboss the edges of each of these flags. Just gives it a lovely finish. So the first stage is just to run the ink along the edge, sort of holding the ink pad slightly at an angle to catch the edge, like you do when you are inking a piece of paper. Now the beauty of this is it's really easy. If you get that line a little bit too thick on the front of your flag, you can just knock some of the embossing powder off before you heat set it. So I'm just using a paintbrush to do that, and I'm going to work my way around the edges of each of my flags. So a little bit of the embossing powder on the front edge of the flag, and then just completely covering the sides. So again, just angling the ink slightly to catch the front, and then going right the way along the edge. And at the risk of repeating myself, I'm going to do exactly the same for all 3 different flags. So I'm just paying attention to where I put that feature stamp each time, making sure that it shows the details that I want. So you can see here the scribble stamp hasn't quite caught. Because it doesn't really matter if this lines up, I'm just going to press that stamp on again, and it works perfectly. And so I've got a lovely scribbly stamp at the centre of my piece, and then I'm just adding that little squiggly unfilled heart shape in 2 other places. And then I'm going to go back again, and I'm just going to emboss the edges of my flag. And then last but not least, onto the blue flag, and this time I am being careful to keep the little face of my cherub. I don't want to obscure her. I nearly did, as you can see here. I'm just knocking off the centre of that stamp so that it just doesn't go right across her face. I thought I'd cracked it, but I almost obliterated her with the edge of the stamp. But the beauty of embossing powder is if it's not where you want it, you can brush it off and start again. So I'm just again putting in that little squiggle stamp to finish off my stamping. As I'm doing this voiceover, it just occurred to me how nice this would look to create this bunting for different destinations you might have been on your travels through life, because you could perhaps use a little section of map with the name of the place that you're featuring, and you could sort of emphasise that with the words that you'll see that I'm going to use later on when I decorate or do the finishing touches to these flags. And you could include little tiny photos of you actually at the place, and you could include things like tickets, so it could make a really nice set of travel bunting. So that just occurred to me while I was watching this, thought I would share it with you, and I'm going to show you the next step. So these are Cosmic Shimmer mica flakes, and I'm going to be using these to add some sparkle to each of the two hearts on the blue flag. So I'm literally adding my Cosmic Shimmer glue and then just sprinkling on those gorgeous flakes. They match the colours perfectly of this project. So I'm going to do a similar thing to each of my flags, but using a different sparkly medium each time. This is Stampendous Frontage Silver Crushed Glass Glitter, according to my Chinese container. And I find that this is actually quite a nice way to keep my glitters. I tend to use them in classes, so they're nice and big, catch all the little excess pieces and save me having a big sparkly tablecloth at the end of the class. So I'm adding some glue and then sparkling on that lovely. And the beauty of using these kinds of glitters is they really do look vintage. So they're adding sparkle, but without being too in your face. And they really are lovely. And these sort of glass flakes are really beautiful. And then last but not least, I'm adding some cream glitter to the pink flag. So the next thing I wanted to add was some romantic words to my little romantic collage, and I'm going to be using these little letter stickers from Tim Holtz, and I'm just going to add various little phrases or words. I'm going to do one in these little letters, so this is sort of my larger phrase on each of my flags, and this is an obvious one, I love you, and I'm going to then add some little rub-ons, again by Tim Holtz, just to add some more romance into the mix. And because I thought they were still a little bit bright compared to the flag, again I'm just adding a little wash just to knock them back a bit of that acrylic paint that I've still got sitting on my desk. So I'm putting the words in different places and keep trying to use up all the other letters that you get left with, but you can see which letters are the least popular in the phrases that I've been making out of these, but at least you get plenty. That's one thing I would say about this. So many sheets of letters that you get, it's just not enough, but these definitely you get lots and lots of sheets of these little stickers, so they have been very useful and they're perfect for scrapbooking and tags as well, so they're quite a nice thing to use on a small project like this. So moving on to the rub-ons next, and this sheet comes with lots and lots of little tiny phrases, and I'm picking out the ones that I think are most romantic. So I've got be true, and what next? And I'm just adding them in different spots in my heart on each of my flags. It just adds another element of interest. So I'm just going to add 3 or 4 little phrases to each of the flags. So since you don't need to watch the whole process of me looking for the right phrases and then just rubbing over the rub-ons to add them to my little pennants, nearly said pendants again, and You get the picture. I'm just adding a little bit of extra romantic interest to each of my flags. Before you move on to this next step where I'm adding double-sided tape, this is a strong double-sided tape around all of the edges of the back of my flag. You want to make sure the glue of all your glittering is dry, otherwise you will end up with half of your glitter on your craft mat, and I wonder how I know that. So I'm just adding this thin double-sided tape all the way around each of my flags. So this is where I'm going to add my ruffle of ribbon. So I've got a couple of ribbons already. This is like American seam binding, or is American seam binding, and I've picked a sort of plain one for this beige flag, and I've got some blue for the blue flag, and I made my own pink using some spun sugar with the cream ribbon, so that I've got a ribbon that matches each of my flags. So I'm going to peel off my double-sided tape, and then I'm going to create a frill of ribbon to frame each of my flags. So this double-sided tape, because it's thin, it does have a habit of the backing pieces breaking, so every now and again I'll spend a lot of time trying to get the ends or the backs of this double-sided tape. Moving swiftly on, I finally managed to get the tape off the back of the double-sided tape, and now I'm going to be using this lovely American seam binding and creating a frill around my flag. So you can see here I'm just pinching the ribbon as I go, creating little pleats. So just be careful as you go around the corners, make sure you add enough little pleats to stop the ribbon curling over at the corners. You might need to add a little bit of glue at these points once you've been around your flag, just to make sure, because you've got that extra bulk of ribbon, that everything stays stuck down. And I'm making sure that the edge of the ribbon covers that double-sided tape so I don't end up with a sticky back of each of my flags. So I'm just taking my time, and I'm gradually pushing the ribbon into little pleats. And the strong double-sided tape is doing the job of holding each of those little pleats, those little pleats in position. Now I could have sewn a length of this ribbon with a running stitch and gathered it up that way, but this, to be honest with you, is a little bit quicker, and actually I think it actually is a nicer finish for this kind of project. If I was making a rosette of ribbon, I would definitely spend the time gathering the ribbon up, but for sort of just going along the edge of a tag or around a project like this, it's easier to do it just pleating it by hand. And then it's into the home straight. And what you want to do is make sure that one piece of ribbon is behind the other. So you might need to add another little piece of double-sided tape, which you'll see me do here, just to hold that overlapping piece in position. I'm also making sure that little raw edge is folded over, so from the front of the pennant you can't see the raw edge of the ribbon. So I'm doing that first, adding the little piece of extra double-sided tape. Flipping over the raw edge of the ribbon where we started, being careful not to fray it, and then carrying on pleating behind just for a couple of pleats, and then pulling the ribbon down so that you can trim it off without being able to see the raw edge at the top of the flag. Another thing to do is just check that the little corners where you're going to add the things that you're going to hang your banner or join your banner together with, and you've just created a lovely ribbon frame around your flag, and you're going to repeat that for each piece of, or each flag in your pennants. But the other thing that I just wanted to add before I move on to my next flag are three little jewels, and I've got these lovely pastel coloured jewels that I'm going to add in different places on each of my flags. These ones have got a little bit of a blue tone, so each flag I've stuck with the theme and the colour and use things that complement that particular colour. And here's one I made earlier. So I've got two of each colour, And I've been around with the ribbon, I've added the little extra jewels, and I'm ready to start joining my romantic banner together. So there's the three colours. I've got my beige, my pink and my blue, and I've got 6 flags in total. So apologies, I didn't quite catch the final step of this project, but I can tell you exactly what I've done. To string my little pieces or my little flags together, I've got this string of pearls. It came from Creative Expressions. It's not a beaded string as in all the beads will fall off, so it worked quite well for this project. I've just cut little lengths of beads, probably about 12 or 13 beads on each little piece, and then I put hot glue into each of the holes of the flags and pushed those beads into that glue, and once that was dry, that was enough to hold the weight of each of my little bunting flags. And then at the end of the flag I've got an extra long piece of the pearls and lots of glue strings, and I've just twisted the end to create a loop, and that is strong enough to hold up my romantic bunting. Now, I've been telling myself all the way through this project that I'm creating this to give to my husband on Valentine's Day, and I'm going to give it to him, but I think actually secretly I've made this for me because I really like it, and I'm going to look for somewhere in our room to hang this romantic bunting. So I hope you've enjoyed the process and you've enjoyed seeing this brand new set of stamps from Rubber Dance. There's lots of things that you can do with them. They're perfect for journaling and they're perfect for making romantic projects like this one. And the other thing is that although I've used them quite delicately here and quite romantically, they can also be quite grungy, and so they suit lots of different styles that you might be working with. As I run through a few more photographs of my lovely romantic bunting, here they are hanging at the bottom of my garden, it's just time for me to say the usual things. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, the share button, and also don't forget to stay tuned to the end of the video so you can see the links that I leave there. I normally leave you a link to perhaps tempt you to watch other videos or to go back to Rubber Dance so that you can check out the stamps, and that's exactly what I will do at the end of this video. So once again, I hope you've enjoyed this romantic project. I hope that you are being romanced today as I post this little tutorial. I wish you a very romantic Valentine's Day, and I look forward to crafting with you again soon. Until next time, thank you for watching. I'm having a little mini giveaway this month with some extra stamps that I received that sort of duplicated ones that I already had as part of the Rubber Dance design team, and I've asked the lovely Bibby if I can use them to have a little giveaway on Valentine's Day. Well, I say on Valentine's Day, I'm going to run it for a couple of weeks so that you'll get a chance to watch these videos and throw your name into the hat for a chance to win some stamps. So the next video will actually show you the stamps that you could potentially win, and I'll give you a few more instructions on what I'd like you to do in order to be able to win them. So, Valentine's Day project, and I'm sharing the love. So the next little link that I'm going to share with you is, this was an alternative Valentine's card. I'm just going to use it as a link to all the Rubber Dance videos that I've got on my website. And then last but not least, I'm going to direct you to my Etsy shop where you could make something like this. So if you choose to follow the link, you will find lots of little workshops over there that I show you how to make bigger projects. So you can craft along with me to make perhaps this celebration cake mini. And you can see I've got a lovely cake with a mini inside. This one's designed for new babies, or the baby's first year in fact, and you also get the printout to be able to print out these sheets with all the prompts so that the person that you decide to give it to, or perhaps you've made it for yourself, will be able to fill it in and record a year of your baby's life. I like to think that most of my workshops are very versatile, and you get all the videos that you need in order to be able to see how to do this, as well as photographic instructions. So you could perhaps make this project into a birthday cake, and I've tucked in lots of tags so that the people that go to the birthday party can sign their good wishes to the person that's having the birthday. So they really do make great keepsakes. This is the Christmas cake version, and of course you can put all your family photos of a gorgeous Christmas inside here, or perhaps you could make make it look a little bit more wintry, and perhaps put a winter holiday set of photographs in the mini album. And then last but not least, once you've mastered baking your single tier cakes, I show you or give you the measurements so that you could make a whole 3 tiers of cake. And in each of those little albums you could perhaps put photographs of the day, photographs of the honeymoon, and then all the guest signatures. So a great keepsake indeed.